Hope you're doing well. Let me get this set up to make sure things are functioning as intended, and they're not, so that's okay. My mic should have gotten better just now. Let me know if that actually happened. We'll see. Quentin, good morning. Hope you're doing great, Quentin. I'm loving life. Catacombs. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Indeed, Catacombs. Ben, acceleration, please. We're going to be talking about some accelerationism today. Tommy, good morning, fam. Good to be back. It sure is. Pardon the delays, folks. Never easy getting set up. Morning, Bitcoiners. Morning, bud. Hope you're doing great. Christine, welcome, Christine. Good morning. I've got a fresh coffee brewed. Hope you do too. Matt, 2024, the year of the breakup. I like it, Matt. I like it. We're going to be breaking up for sure. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning, Daniel. Hope everything's going well in Vermont. Good morning. Coffee and sunshine. Aqualodge, good morning. We got the sun, we got the coffee. Hassan, whoops. I'm getting notes in here. There we go. Good morning, Hassan. Good morning, David. Sergio, good morning, Bitcoiners. Already hit the gym, coffee pumping through my veins. You're winning, Sergio. That is a winning formula. Catacombs again, news cycle is pretty active and it's early in the year. Lead up to the election is going to be something to see. No kidding. Tom, military grade brainwashing going around all over the place, but it's getting weaker. That's the fun part, right? It doesn't have its effect. Happy New Year, plebs. Happy New Year indeed, plebs. We love you. Good morning, Jason. Happy Bitcoin Thursday to all of you. Indeed. Good morning. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Nick. Happy New Year indeed. Wisteria, top of the morning, depending on where you are. Here, indeed. It's a little later here. I have an anomaly. I get an extra hour, I guess you could say. I start at 9 a.m. here because we're an hour ahead of Eastern Standard Time. Sup, fam? What's up, Austin? Hope you had a good New Year's. And Veterans Cannabis Advocacy, good day, Bitcoin Breakup Breakfast Crew 2024. We are all winning. We're going to win big time this year, big time. But let's first acknowledge Sunrise Tech operating in 2024 as expected, no problems at all. Bitcoin operating without any problems either. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. We've got some great Moscow time today. Everyone's contributing to Moscow time these days. It's awesome. So it's a bit of a new setup. So let me know if anything goes crazy. I do want to just check Rumble before I get going on Moscow time to make sure that connection happened because I had to do it a little differently today. New machines, new location. You never know. Looks like I'm live. Looks like we're doing okay over on Rumble. Should be fine. I'll come back later and check the comments on Rumble. Let's get our first taste of Moscow time. Moscow time. What's the fakest news of 2024? There's a lot already. Let's just start with the weather, right? We love fake weather news. It's always my favorite. I love it, right? We get this from Bloomberg Energy, right? Freezing weather. Remember at Christmas, it was too hot. It was too hot, right? So, the weather is not climate and other stuff like that. So it was too hot over Christmas, but now they're getting the cold weather is coming. So they're broken, right? So what do they say? Freezing weather will spread across most of Europe later this weekend, testing the region's energy systems after a largely mild winter so far. And then they say, but global warming deniers, record heat, food supply shocks, and the rise of electric SUVs are just some of the items on Bloomberg Green's 2024 climate book. So freezing weather doesn't mean anything. Who cares, right? Hot weather last week counted, but the freezing weather this week doesn't count. But it doesn't matter anyway because the main stories are global warming deniers. Okay, it's deniers. That's the climate outlook, right? So there you go. Now, that was from Bloomberg Energy. Now we've got the Washington Post, right? So they're not as concerned about the new cold weather that's coming. They're still hung up on last week's warm winter, wet weather. So here's what they say. The Great Lakes had the smallest amount of ice cover this New Year's Day in at least the past 50 years. and are on track to receive less than the seasonal average this winter, according to government data. I can remember this exact headline like 10 times in my life. There's no ice in the Great Lakes. What are we going to do in like 2 weeks? There's going to be like 4 feet of it. People ice fishing everywhere, and you're going to get semi-trucks on it. Okay, I promise you. Don't worry about it. They're not going to be worried about the ice stuff. Now, we're worried, Germany, they're cold now, and then their energy systems, they were warm last week, so it wasn't a problem, but now they're cold, but they got other problems, it turns out. So, they've got politics in Germany too, if you didn't know that, right? They're not important and nobody cares about them, but this is something that's happening, right? This is happening. So the German far-right party, AfD, sees membership grow as the SPD suggests a ban. Just ban them. They're growing. Ban them. We don't want them around. So here's the other headline. Germany's ruling left-wing SPD party is suggesting to ban the right-wing ADF party, which recorded a sharp rise in membership in 2020. Just a little ban. Just got to ban them. That's the answer. This is a good one, too, from the Washington Post. Speaking of pulling a Trump in Germany, right? If it's not going well with your political candidates, you can do like America. You can ban them. Don't worry about it. America loves banning your political opponents because it's much faster. It's much better, right? So here's what the Washington Post says. How Trump reignited his base and took control of the Republican Party. He did that. He did it this year, apparently. Okay, he did it this year, guys. It wasn't that he was president 4 years ago for 4 years. No. He did it this year, right? From a moment of vulnerability after the midterm, he was vulnerable. The former president turned his criminal indictments into a rallying cry and benefited from a disciplined campaign, stalled opposition, and Biden's weakness. Well, they got a little bit right. So that's good for the Washington Post. They got a little bit of a headline there. Now I've got a special collection of Moscow Time. I've been leading up to this, right? This is all the gay headlines from yesterday. President Gay, right? They had a bunch of gay headlines about her and her resignation. And Drew Holden has gathered them all together because it really was a tour de force yesterday in Moscow Time contributions, right? Remember when I said at the start today, everyone's contributing to Moscow Time now. I just have unlimited people trying to help me get Moscow Time to be as funny as possible. So we got some really great ones, right? So Drew Holden 360 gathered them all together, and he wanted to let us know about all of these things, right? Yeah, Wisteria says her name is so fitting. I said that it was one of the first things I said. It was one of the first things I said, it's a simulation wink. All right, so here's the New York Times. How a proxy fight over campus politics brought down Harvard's president. Amid plagiarism allegations and a backlash on campus anti-Semitism, Claudine Gay became an avatar for broader criticisms of academia. Politico, right? So they're going to blame conservatives too. Nightly reports on Wright's coordinated campaign that helped engineer the departure of the head of the most influential university in the world, right? So we get a little more of this, right? This one's a really good word salad, right? So this is when our test for cognitive dissonance is when you say things that make no sense. You try and make sense out of this headline, okay? You try, do your best. Here we go. This is CNN reporter Matt Egan on the Harvard plagiarism scandal. We should note that Claudine Gay has not been accused of stealing anyone's ideas in any of her writings. She has been accused of sort of more like copying other people's writings without attribution. So it's been more sloppy attribution than stealing anyone's ideas. We get more. We're not done. We're not done, right? We're not done. Okay, we got this one here from Ibram Kendi. We love Ibram, right? Didn't he work at Harvard for a while, but it's all corrupt and they stole a bunch of money? Didn't that happen? Didn't something like that happen? I don't pay attention too much. Racist mobs won't stop until they topple all Black people from positions of power and influence who are not reinforcing the structure of racism. What these racist mobs are doing should be obvious to any reporter who cares about truth or justice as opposed to conflicts and cliques. It should be obvious, guys. It should just be obvious. It's obvious that Gay is being unfairly attacked. It's obvious. Kendi says it. It's obvious. It's obvious. NBC News says This is from Al Sharpton, right? You got to quote Al Sharpton. Harvard's president's resignation is an attack on every black woman in the United States. Every black woman was attacked. Holy shit. And I'm, you'd be really, guess what? Nicole Hannah-Jones said. Guess what? Nicole Hannah-Jones said. You are going to be surprised, guys. You're going to be surprised. You're never going to see this one coming, right? She's the one who wrote 1666 or whatever that thing that says in America was like, if it wasn't for slavery, there isn't an America. That's the point of America. That she wrote a whole thing. Let's be real. This is an extension of what happened to me at UNC, and it is a glimpse into the future to come. Academic freedom is under attack, everyone. Racial justice programs are under attack. Black women will be made to pay. Our so-called allies too often lack any courage. All right? Thank you, Nicole Hannah-Jones. That's really good. Oh, and you'd wonder, she had a New York Times editorial board, came on to MSNBC. Guess what she said? You guess. Guess what it is? Guess. This is really an attack on academic freedom. This is an attack on diversity. This is an attack on multiculturalism. I don't have to say that they're racist because you can hear and see the racism in the attacks. It's obvious. It's obvious. Everyone, it's obvious, right? NBC News convened a panel to figure out if racism wasn't the culprit. And guess what? Guess what they said? Guess what, guys? It is racism. It was, according to NBC. That's what they said. This one's really good too, right? This is the one that really got a lot of attention yesterday. This was sort of the gold medal winner in the gay headlines yesterday. And here's what it is. It's Harvard's president's resignation highlights new conservative weapon against colleges. Plagiarism. It's a new weapon, guys. It's a new weapon. No word on whether they're Bitcoiners or just conservatives are using it. We're not sure. You'd think Bitcoiners, we don't like double spending or counterfeit money. So maybe they didn't. They're after conservatives here. So Bitcoiners are getting off the hook a bit, right? But here's the even better part, right? So within that amazing headline, there was a bit of a kicker with it. Okay, so the original article that talked about what was going on really did spend a bit of time on Christopher Rufo, who we've mentioned many times. He was one of the first people. He's running that Freedom College or whatever that thing is in Texas that DeSantis set up. So it's the no DEI, no woke college. And so he was one of the first people to highlight and start this campaign. He sort of joined with Bill Ackman on this campaign against President Gay, and was the person who really underlined the, plagiarism, did the research, found out where it was. And so after that, he said, this is what they say, okay? I'll just read you the headline from this article, all right? Because it's not the headline, but the actual piece in the article. It's amazing. Christopher Rufo, a conservative activist who helped orchestrate the effort, celebrated her departure as a win in his campaign against elite institutions of higher education. On X, formerly Twitter, he wrote, scalped. That's what he wrote. He wrote, scalped. Now, according to the Associated Press, what it meant was as if Gay was a trophy of violence, invoking a gruesome practice taken up by white colonialists who sought to eradicate Native Americans. So if you didn't know about this, it was actually the colonists who invented scalping. So I wasn't aware. That's where scalping came from. I always thought it was a native practice. But who could argue with the Associated Press? They have such a great reputation. I must have had everything wrong. I must have always had it backwards. I don't know. That must be the only way. So this one's also excellent, right? Bill Ackman. Of all, I didn't like Bill Ackman for a long time, right? I really didn't like him. I could probably not like him again. He had a bit of Trump derangement syndrome. So this annoying stuff that he does, like he's doing with President Gay, that whole thing used to irritate me a little. But now that he's, from a different angle, he's got a new target. He's kind of funny. And now I start to have this idea of like, of all, imagine waking up and Bill Ackman is your enemy. Fucking guy doesn't stop, right? So now that she's scalped, he came out and is saying he's now taking issue because she's staying on his faculty. She still has a job as a prof at Harvard. And he goes, this makes no sense. How can she continue as a member of faculty? So now he's taking that up, right? He's not going to end it. So that's pretty good, right? Forbes with a really good one here, right? So now we're going to come down after that peak of Associated Press. This is from Forbes. Claudine Gay resigns from Harvard. Why Black excellence is never enough. It's just never enough, guys. Michael Jordan, he did all that stuff, and people are still like, I don't know if he's a great basketball player. It wasn't enough, guys. It wasn't enough, right? It wasn't enough. I live here in Barbados, and we're not even in Jamaica, but we've got a huge stadium dedicated to Usain Bolt. It's never enough, guys. You can't, Black people who are good at stuff, that it never gets, no one remembers it, right? It's just everybody forgets. It's not enough. It's not enough, according to Forbes, right? And we have one more, just because DEI isn't quite over, right? This story. And weirdly, so I tried to get the show off the ground yesterday. I just ran out of time setting everything up. But I did have some notes, and I'm holding them over today. And one thing that would have been funny is that my Moscow time stuff ended up going viral. Not mine, but the stuff I was covering ended up going viral yesterday and took on a whole new meaning. And it was Disney Star Wars stuff, right? So yesterday it was announced that, now this has already been announced before, but for some reason they interviewed the Pakistani-born director of the next Star Wars movie. And she said, we're in 2024 now, and it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape a story in a galaxy far, far away, because Kathleen Kennedy and these people, I don't know if she converted or became trans or something, but I always thought a woman was in charge of Star Wars since Disney bought it, but I guess I was wrong. I guess it's just the director's chair that's really important, maybe not the executive producer who dictates all the casting and directors themselves. Maybe that's not as important as just the director, but that's what they're saying, right? So yesterday, this ends up going completely viral, and everyone is sort of laughing at it. Now, we've covered this lady in Disney and the new Disney movie for a little while, the new Disney Star Wars movie, and have said, probably going to be the biggest failure. Now you've got financial analysts, because something else happened yesterday. It was actually, this headline was leading into part of what I was going to cover yesterday, which is what we're going to cover right now quickly. The funny thing is, this interview came out, okay, right after the news came out in the early morning, right? Yesterday, early morning, a few of the funds, the investors, the people who own a lot of Disney stock, came out and said they're supporting the board members who are in Disney now, and a new slate of board members. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we've been talking for quite a while about how Ike Perlmutter, the guy who's been an activist investor trying to shake and change the Disney board, had met resistance. So he met resistance from a group of people and new funds yesterday. So I've got those notes here. Let me get them. So what happened yesterday was these new, not new, but different groups joined, right? So Value Act entered a deal with Walt Disney yesterday to consult activist investor on strategy. So they came out and announced that they're going to support the board, and this is Nelson Peltz, right? So the proxy fight with Peltz and Perlmutter or whatever his name is. So Perlmutter is the guy who ran Marvel, got a bunch of Disney shares when Disney bought Marvel, and still has enough sway in the company because of his shares. He gave them over to this guy, Nelson Peltz, who's an activist. So this was in a reaction to the Nelson Peltz stuff, okay? So Value Act and one other, the other one that came out was, I have the name here somewhere. It was another one of these groups, all right? So they came out and they said they're also going to support the board. Right? There were two groups that came out and said it. So imagine, the headline yesterday for the Disney Star Wars thing happened after the announcements about these board members, all right? So the board activism, Value Act, these people who are going to support it and go with it, all of those folks, they came out and made their announcement that they're going with Bob Iger and the board that's there, and they might put their own, but they're going to basically fight over who's on the board, right? So they tried that yesterday, but then this story went viral. In the end, people are now predicting that the new Star Wars movie will make exactly zero money because it's embracing this DEI stuff. And the idea that, like, you know, Princess Leia and everything that's happened before was just stupid. And it's like some macho thing inside of Star Wars that's got to be fixed by this Pakistani director who said, and everyone was taking clips from her over the past few days, right, that the point of her movies is to make men feel uncomfortable, right? That's who they picked to do a Star Wars movie. So they pick her on the same day. Now, let's learn a little bit about what this Value Act is, because I was wondering about Value Act. Who are these people that are now supporting Disney, right? Who are these people that are coming in at this moment to stop activists, to keep the DEI flowing, right? Who is this? Well, we found out, due to our great and helpful and fruitful Mike Benz, that Thomas Pritzker, right, who was also in the Epstein documents, right, the Hyatt Hotels billionaire, allegedly he was one of the names mentioned yesterday. So imagine you're Disney and this is your day, okay? This is your day yesterday. This is your day. You wake up, and okay, I'm Bob Iger. I got new activist investors. They're going to support my board. I can hold off this fight. I'm going to announce a little bit about a Star Wars movie, right? And it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day. It happens to be on the day where the DEI thing is in the tank. Sean Ono Lennon, Elon Musk, everyone's saying DEI is straight racism. It's got to end. And they pull up a DEI director who just destroys the show. But then we find out, because it's also Epstein list day, that the activist investor trying to help Disney is on the pedo list. So here's what we know. Thomas Pritzker is one of these Value Act guys, right? So here's what we know about Value Act. They're the New York Times, Microsoft. So they only invest in companies that are being blackmailed by the Epstein list guys, right? So there's Bill Gates. So they did Microsoft, they did the New York Times. This is what they do. They go in and they, you know, give them some advice and this and that. And sometimes it goes okay, right? But here's what we know from the Pritzkers, right? We know more about them. They're called the super mob. So they don't call it the Chicago super mob for nothing. The Pritzkers have several generations of CIA ties, mob ties, vice trade ties, and hotel casino ties. And yes, these things are related. Today, the Pritzkers are sort of all over the place, right? He calls them the Royal Tenenbaums of the business. And it turns out that nothing at Disney or any of these groups has ever been the same since the Pritzkers got involved and manipulated all this stuff. So imagine we get, imagine we're going to get the Pritzker crime family. So this is what, and I didn't even know this either. The Pritzkers are also involved with Harvard. Right? So they're part of the DEI at Harvard. This is what Mike Ben says. The Pritzker crime family runs Harvard, not the latest DEI figurehead. Gay never had to show up a day anyway to play her part, right? So this is just what Mike Benz is saying about Pritzker. So here we go. The same family that's on the Epstein thing is involved with the company trying to save the board at Disney, and it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. It doesn't look like anyway. Mike Benz also warning us that some of these schools like Brown are now starting to give certificates in DEI strategies. So send your kids to college to get a DEI strategy, right? And they've got a fellow with rainbow colored hair who's the faculty lead in rainbow disruption, it's called. So certificates in DEI compliance are bound to come out soon. So there you go. And speaking of misinformation, this is a headline from The Guardian, and Mike Benz has broken it down for us again. Stakes are really high. Misinformation researcher changes tack for 2024 U.S. election. This could have made Moscow time today. And here's what we know. And it's written by, this is the person that they interview, right? So stakes are really high. The person who gave this quote is named Kate. Hold on, why is this not? Kate Starbird says attacks have made research difficult, and claims of bias arise because prevalence of lies from the right. That's what it's the lies from the right. That's what's getting them, right? So this is a key researcher precisely because it's how many right wingers who spread the worst lies. So this is in the Guardian, right? And Mike Benz writes the following: Kate Starbird, one of the top figures in the censorship industry and who currently is on a $2.25 million government grant from the Biden administration for censorship, is back with a new message. Censors aren't biased against right-wingers. Right-wing people are just liars who just lie more. That's her answer, right? You should see the physiognomy of this lady. She is as crazy looking as the main Secretary of State. You know how they all have the Charlie Manson crazy eyes, right? They're all doing the crazy eyes all the time. She's another crazy eyed person. And again, we have to start realizing that we're not, as Bitcoiners, right? We see the fight between the right and the left. The left looks crazier. There's enough crazy people on the right too, not nearly as many. But we got to step back here and just look at the mental illness spreading around, right? Just mental illness coming from universities, coming from the media, coming from academia, all of these places. These are no longer people who you should see as having opinions that you can argue with. Oh, that's an academic. We just don't agree on the facts. Let's have a debate about stuff. No. After a certain amount of time, the more brainwashing and propaganda you consume, the more you bathe in the reality, the synthesized reality that comes out of these propaganda outlets, you're going to suffer brain damage. It's not that you get opinions that are wrong. You actually degrade your capacity to even see what's right, to see what's true or anything like that. And that's what we're seeing here. So I think a lot of these people believe what they're saying, what they see, but that's mostly because their brains have actually been stunted and they've become smoothed out by the amount of brainwashing that they're consuming. And that's how you get these results, right? So Kate Starbird, another one of these people. So you've got our understanding anyway of how the media functions, how academia functions, and how entertainment media, so the news, entertainment, and academia, three of the most important pillars of the fiat industrial complex, right? What's her name again? Her name is, let me get it. Her name is Starbird, I think is what I said, Starbird. Here it is, yeah. Her name is Kate Starbird. Kate Starbird, not Starbucks, Starbird, as in a bird that flies. So there you go. And now all of this converging on the DEI thing, and the DEI becoming another thing that we can mock, because we're not here to sort of say the fiat world has a point. We're here to laugh at it, right? And one of the funniest things that's happened, so within all of this stuff that's going on, right? Disney, the mocking, Star Wars, Harvard, one of the funniest things that happened simultaneous to this, which should let us all know that we are entering a new world, that the simulation is just winking, is that Mickey Mouse came off copyright, the original Steamboat Mickey. Here, there was a funny joke that Scott Adams published the first day it happened on Christmas Day. And, he's the Dilbert cartoonist. So I'll try to describe a Dilbert comic without showing it to you, but it was easy. It was funny to do. I got a few laughs when I showed it around at Christmas. So you get the Steamboat Mickey, because it's only the first Mickey. It's not the color Mickey that's off copyright. It's the original black and white Mickey. It's from the Steamboat Mickey movie, right? So he's there, he's doing his thing with the wheel, and he hops into the office with the boss, the pointy-haired boss from Dilbert. So he says, hi, and the pony brows, get out of here. And he goes, no, don't worry. I'm a free mouse. You can't be sued by Disney anymore. There's a copyright thing. I'm free. And he goes, oh, that's great. And then the mouse asks, but I'm looking for a job. But do you discriminate against black and white mouses? Mice? Do you discriminate against, do you have DEI and do you discriminate against black and white mice? And the joke, funny, the pointy hair boss goes, that's a gray area. You know, it's a pretty good one, right? But anyway, everyone yesterday, now that it's free, going viral. There's a movie coming out, a horror movie starring starring Mickey, by the way. That was announced yesterday too, the day the copyright was finished. So you're going to see a horror movie starring Mickey Mouse, which I will love. So that'll come out. But you also had a bunch of people make their own parodies now, and because they can't do any copyright infringements, it's sort of all over the place. And you get these folks, saying "free the mouse." Now I can say what I always wanted to say. He's like shooting people on a steamboat that are coming in the migrant boats. He's punching out the rainbow-haired DEI officers. It's very good stuff. It's very funny. Now, we're not here to promote violence. We're laughing with Mickey Mouse, guys, right? A very wholesome thing to do. We're just laughing with Mickey Mouse. There's nothing we can do. Now that Mickey Mouse's sense of humor has changed, right? Who are we to not follow Mickey's lead and change our sense of humor with Mickey? Mickey's laughing at new things, and I think we should all take time to laugh at what Mickey thinks is funny, right? So Mickey doing his job. Mickey just being Mickey. But now we also see that the legal system is starting to really capture this DEI thing, and the lawfare that's being waged now by a lot of conservatives and all of these PACs is now training itself on what this DEI stuff is. And it turns out that if you remember America First Legal, it's something that we've been talking about for a while. It's a PAC founded by Stephen Miller. You know, the kind of creepy guy that worked for Trump. I like the guy, but he, let's be honest. If he ever came out with an Epstein Island connection, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it'll be Epstein, but he just has a bit of a look to him. But I don't know shit. He's probably a nice guy, right? I'm just making shit up. I have zero inside information on him, and I'm actually here to comment on the good work he's doing. So I'm just saying what I perceive, right? Don't want to give too much blasting on one political side. We're Bitcoiners, right? We have time to criticize everyone. So he is a Republican. I don't know what's really up with him, but this was clever. And so he's got this America First legal thing that actually just attacks all of these legal cases in order to get attention on them and, change the conversation. So here's what they came up with: 10 landmark America First lawsuits to defeat DEI. So here's what they've done. It's amazing, right? They tweeted the following: DEI is racism. It is judging people based on skin color or sex rather than skill and merit. And it's illegal under federal law. We're fighting back. If you're a victim of DEI policies, contact us. And here's the ones they've already launched. New York University sued NYU for their alleged race and sex discrimination when selecting student editors for their law review. I've seen those before, right? Meta filed suit against Meta for alleged illegal racial discrimination in hiring practices. Target filed suit on behalf of shareholders for Target's alleged misleading statements about its monitoring for risks while pursuing woke ESG goals. They're suing Amazon, sued Amazon for discriminating on the basis of race with new startup programs. They're suing the Department of Agriculture, prevailed in a lawsuit against the USDA for its illegal race-based debt relief program. So I guess they were excluding white people, poor white people, from financial support. Probably not a good idea. The North Face filed a defamation lawsuit on behalf of an individual who lost his job because of false accusations of previous racist comments. Progressive, it's an insurance company, sued Progressive for allegedly discriminating based on race while making contracts. Texas A&M filed the class action lawsuit for allegedly racial discrimination in hiring. Major medical schools filed suit against 6 medical schools for illegal race and sex preferences and admissions. Small Business Administration prevailed in a lawsuit against the SBA for their illegal racial discrimination against white restaurant and bar owners. So I don't know the details of what's going on in all those cases, whether some of them were, sort of low-hanging fruit, lawfare type of things. I don't know the stories behind all of those ones, so I'm not defending what every one of these cases. What I am saying is it's funny. It's funny that people are doing this, and we should embrace this kind of humor because it's hilarious. So, but here's the thing, right? We saw the DEI, we saw the Pritzkers, their influence now trying to join in to continue the DEI at Disney. The DEI at Harvard seems to be failing. So we have a situation here, and again, I've brought it up many times. The fiat system based on words to propagate requires the word broadcasters, so movies, media, universities, the ones who speak in English language code, it's got to unify those in order to broadcast a message. And cracks in that message keep the network from propagating. It would be the same as nodes going down. Now, what it looks like has happened, and I'm going to say with the Epstein stuff, we're going to get into the Epstein stuff now. What it looks like has happened is a difficulty adjustment. So use your understanding of Bitcoin for a second, understanding how our network propagates, right? Hash rate's high, difficulty adjusts, it becomes more difficult to find a block. And there are scenarios, and we've seen them before, where this happens. We saw it during the FTX collapse, if you remember. Miners turning off, energy prices were skyrocketing while asset prices were sinking. So you had this situation where blocks slowed down for a little while. It wasn't cataclysmic, it wasn't catastrophic or anything like that, but you can see in a situation where miners come off, you get into a sort of difficulty chasm, right? It's a theoretical situation in Bitcoin that we've discussed for many times, but if you go from a very high hash rate to a small one, the difficulty for the miners remaining might be too much, that it might take too long to find a block, and you can actually really get slow, right? That's possible. Now take that logic and apply it to the fiat system for a second, right? The amount of leverage, the amount of brainwashing required to push all of these stories over the line and suppress other stories. For example, January 6th was an insurrection. It's actually Trump who's being blackmailed by Russia. All of the hoaxes that are perpetrated, right? Keeping, the Washington Post headline on Epstein himself. Look at the headline for Epstein today, right? Just look at the effort it takes to write a headline like this. A federal court unsealed nearly 950 pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, including dozens of previously redacted names associated with the infamous case. The politically connected multimillionaire was accused of abusing dozens of teenage girls. They don't mention one name. They don't mention anyone who's involved in it, right? It's just him, and he's the one accused. It's just back on Epstein, right? So think of the corruption that is existing and the corruption that we can all see. And then for a second, think of the amount of effort that's required for the brainwashers to get things back to normal. The difficulty adjustment that's happening right now is insurmountable for the fiat industrial complex. It can't do this. They're losing capacity while the amount of stories they have to lie about are getting more. So the difficulty level of brainwashing and propagating the fiat node, the fiat network, is now this high, but the capacity is much lower, right? So they're caught in a difficulty adjustment right now that I don't think they're ever getting out of. Not in 2024, not without something drastic, right? Now, we talk about the drastic thing pretty often. Maybe it'll be there. But one of the things we've seen from the election season, and it's one of the things that one of my best predictions of 2023, I would say, is that the primaries would produce candidates that would actually make us assassination proof to Trump. Because for a while, it was only Trump who had the balls to say this stuff, and it was only Trump who had the ability. In a lot of ways, there was a lot resting on Trump's capacity, and that wasn't a good position to be in, right? Because Trump has his failings. As much as I love Donald Trump, I love him, right? But he has his weaknesses, and the love I have for him, I'd say, comes from his weaknesses, right? Trump has this weird thing where he fails at stuff, and you just want to say, man, if you just did it my way, or if you just listened to my advice and did it a little, just didn't say it that way, you'd be fine. So it's a weird where some of these feelings come from is from this feeling that I think a lot of people who were with Trump in the early days have, that We want him to succeed, but despite himself, he screws up all the time, and he's kind of a disappointment, right? As much as I love the guy, and I'll always love him, right? He'll always be the funniest. He'll always be someone who, what did he say? But now we're talking about president for the next election. Now, if he wins, I'm happy. Like, I think it's funny. I'll watch some, people have broken brains, and it'll be great, right? But what the primaries have done has shown us and has created a situation where we can actually survive now a Trump assassination. He's not the only one playing this game. Vivek, RFK, these guys are excellent and show us that Trump can actually be, he was the first one to break through, but there's other people, and we all have to admit, after the past holidays, for example, there's no one like Vivek. He is the most clear, he is the best fighter we have in a lot of ways, right? Trump can win the fight, but it's always got to be bloody and dirty. Vivek is able to win it with such grace and style, and it's just different, right? Now, I love RFK, but the voice and the stuff, it's hard. He doesn't have the same rhetorical. He has a very, a mind palace, a very clear way of seeing the world, and I love it, right? Any one of these people, we're going to be fine. I mean, that's the message. We're going to be fine with any one of these people. And so, and none of them are going to let it go. Look at Elon, right? Elon would be, I'd put in that group as well, right? Elon, you didn't really know what side he was on until the X acquisition and all this stuff. Now we have X, and one of my big worries, right? One of my big worries was that X would be targeted by the Apple iStore or the Google Store. And that continues to be a worry. I predict somewhere in 2024, you're going to see that happen, right? Where you're going to have to side load your X app onto your iPhone. I think that should kill Apple. I think Apple, who, I don't think Tim Apple came up in any of the Epstein files. I'm not sure. It might have been the one redacted name. That would be hilarious. But Tim Apple, I'm not going to say I don't have any idea about his Epstein stuff. But I bet you he's got some blackmailable stuff on him. And I bet you everything he's done so far is not entirely honest. And so when he starts talking about kicking off X from the App Store and all of these things, well, the comeuppance for Apple is going to be real. And it doesn't even matter, though, because 2 days ago, an amazing thing happened, which is Starlink sent up another rocket. I think it was one of the Falcon heavy rockets, and they deployed a Starlink payload, 6 satellites. And these 6 satellites are going to be all for direct to cell phone communication. So no more carriers, no more AT&T, no more T-Mobile. All that's going to be gone. You're going to be able to connect your phone anywhere, which means Elon can actually get into the cell phone business, and he can get rid of the operating systems. Because we know that between Apple and Google, they already sold us out with the cloud. They've already allowed the cloud to be subpoenaed, information to be subpoenaed, all the pings. It looks like they can geo-track, not by spying on individuals, but by going through the relays. What Satoshi warned us about, the untrusted third parties. It looks like the servers that the cell phone carriers and cell makers have, so in this case, Apple, Google, and the others, these servers where the iTunes and the iCloud goes have been corrupted by the same forces that are pushing DEI, the same forces that are pushing Ukraine, the same forces that are pushing the military-industrial complex. It looks like they're capable of looking into any of this stuff. So what we saw from the Epstein stuff yesterday, nothing new. I mean, the names are all ones we knew. I think, whenever you go with Epstein, you got to go with the actual godfather of the Epstein story, which is Cernovich, right? Only Cernovich was interested in this story years ago. Only Cernovich in 2017 was like, why the hell is this guy not in jail? All right, only Cernovich asked that. And so Cernovich put out a long post yesterday. Remember, it's Cernovich's actual name on the documents that got Epstein back in jail, that got him suicided, right? It had been forgotten and erased until then. And so Cernovich gave his version of the events as everyone's talking with the names. Again, The names are exactly the same ones we've seen leaked. I don't think we learned much new. I think everyone knew that Jimmy Kimmel was on the list. You see the Jimmy Kimmel, he got into Aaron Rodgers, a speaker at Bitcoin 2022, called out that he would be on the list, that Jimmy Kimmel would be on the list. Jimmy Kimmel tries to deny it. He's totally on the list. So, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel, I don't, we have to avoid Schadenfreude, like the pleasure in other people's misery, right? That is a dark path. For Bitcoiners have to avoid that path in the next little while, right? This is until we actually build the new world on the Bitcoin standard. I don't think we have time. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We can't sit around and say, I'm really, going to enjoy the misery other people are feeling, right? So don't do it, right? Don't sit around and get too much enjoyment out of other people's misery. But you can pick a couple, one or two that you say, that person really deserves it. Jimmy Kimmel's on my list, right? I'm not going to bathe in enjoying what he's going through, but he has it coming. So yeah, and he's got the Manson eyes. Yeah, he's got the Manson eyes. So here's what Cernovich says. Today, a tranche of documents were released in a case involving Epstein. There's no revelations. Epstein's case was covered up. I can explain why. So he goes through the whole thing here about how we got it. Basically, by 2019, the case I sought to intervene in had an orange man bad angle because Trump's labor secretary was now the person who could do it, Alexander Acosta. Even if the motives were impure, at least we were to the races. So he spent a bunch of money. They finally got him charged, right? Charged for paying minors for massages from 2002 to 2005. Yet what was more newsworthy was that the indictment left out, right? The indictment against Epstein does not charge anyone except Epstein, and there's nothing to indicate that anyone flew to Epstein's private island faced any scrutiny. So that's what he said back then. And then they talked about how the Southern District of New York didn't have the mandate to go to New Mexico, Paris, or the U.S. Virgin Islands to do any mop-up. That wasn't available. So basically, they just got him on the one New York charge while crews of people went to these other locations and mopped everything up, right? So this is where the information from the safe went missing, right? So he says during that time, a safe went missing. So here I'll read the whole part. Because the Southern District of New York charged the lowest level offenses possible, they lacked jurisdiction to raid Epstein's island in Little St. James, as well as his New Mexico and Paris properties. Those houses were left unattended for a couple of weeks. During that time, a safe went missing. During the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, it was reported evidence from Jeffrey Epstein's safe went missing after FBI raid. What was in the safe, we'll never know for certain. We do know that the FBI has Jeffrey Epstein's blackmail files. The real Jeffrey Epstein files are the blackmail material. Very powerful forces have made sure we will never see it. I guess one of the relevant stories too is that Trump wasn't part of the Epstein stuff, right? Which I think we all knew before. Trump had kicked him out of the Mar-a-Lago for doing this stuff. So, that's kind of good news in a sense that you don't have to sit around arguing with those things. So you take that story of Epstein and what we can clearly see is corruption, right? Now, again, go back to the nodes propagating Bitcoin. Now that we understand the corruption with DEI, the corruption with the mainstream media, the corruption with Hollywood, the book publishing corruption, we've understood that again many times, right? The folks who get crazy with that stuff. But here's one more, right? The Ray Epps story. So this got lost in all of the crazy news yesterday. Remember Ray Epps, right? Ray Epps, one of the January 6 people. So we found out, and this now with all we know about corruption, with all we know, right? The last two stories this morning are going to help us understand really what's going on and how the machine operates and how it functions and what we're up against as Bitcoiners to change reality, right? Here's what we know. So, and imagine Epstein and Epps, right? Epstein and Epps. How real is all of this? I don't know. We'll see. The Department of Justice is recommending just 6 months in jail for Ray Epps. Okay, that came 2 days ago. the only J6 defendant caught on camera telling people to go into the Capitol building. The night before, even, if you remember, that video was surfaced. They say that they gave him a plea deal because he cooperated with the FBI. Nice guy, Ray Epps. Tried to de-escalate the conflict. That's not true. And the subject of conspiracy theories that he was a Fed, right? Those are the reasons. So Darren Beatty shared a thread that he wrote about this from 2 years ago almost. And here's what he says. The New York Times puff piece on Ray Epps is hugely important. Ray Epps, the only person caught on camera, repeated. And this was the, if you remember the headline, it's been just hell, life as the victim of a January 6th conspiracy theory. He's the victim, guys. He's the victim. He's the victim. Ray Epps, the only person caught on repeatedly directing people into the Capitol, is the only J6 rioter in the New York Times has written a puff piece for. They know Epps is the smoking gun, and this is likely the beginning of a monumental damage control campaign. Remember the difficulty adjustment that I talked about. The difficulty adjustment is everything. The difficulty adjustment on Epps and Epstein is now insurmountable. We'll never believe these things, ever, ever. It's not possible to get the New York Times to be able to clean up its reputation after this. It basically just got a massive... basically the entire New York City plumbing and all of the poo that comes out of every bum in New York City launched into its face at once. It is not possible to clean it up. It is forever messy, forever, right? Here's what they say. To get acquainted with Epps, watch the video compilation again. This is the one where the January 6th rioter, the New York Times has managed to write a puff piece for. So he goes on and on about all the crazy things that he said that day. Text messages. He described to his nephew he wanted to orchestrate movements of the people up to the gates and all that stuff. So here we go, right? We've got Ray Epps, Epstein, and all of these folks. And what it is all coming down to, this ability to understand. Oh, yeah. So the other one, Blackwell's. So it was two big activist funds, Blackwell's and the other one I was mentioning, what were they called? Anyway, they're both the ones trying to oppose the new board, right? So there you go. The inability for them to do that, I think, and the inability for them to sell, these stories as real, right? That Ray Epps is a good guy, Jeffrey Epstein is alone, he had no there was nothing else to it. We understand now that blackmail and corruption and these things are at a level that are systematic and that actually explain most of the things that go on in front of our eyes. So when you put that into the context of elections now, right? So yesterday, Trump also released his findings on swing states. As president, he was acting president who did compile a report on the swing state voting anomalies that happened after the election. And Kaneko the Great covered the whole thing. And here's what we found out, right? So President Trump released a summary of election fraud in 2020 presidential election in the swing states. So here's what Kaneko writes, right? It has often been repeated there is no evidence of fraud in the 2020 election. In actuality, there is no evidence Joe Biden won. I'll go further. There's no evidence we had an election. All right, that's what I think. And now a lot of people also picking up these quotes from Biden yesterday where he's going on and on and on about elections and the corruption inside, and it doesn't matter who, if you vote for him, he doesn't need your help, he says at one point, right? I don't need your help. It matters who counts the votes, right? He was saying all this kind of stuff. So people have been picking up on this yesterday. I'll read some of these quotes, and they're quite amazing, right? They're really amazing to see in real life. So here we go. He's saying, we have put together the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. So DEI stuff, right? DEI. DEI was how to get good elections is what Joe Biden is saying. I don't need you to get me elected, is his quote. It's no longer just who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible people to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote and whether your vote counts at all. That's what he says. That is Joe Biden with his half brain saying explicitly what was going on. And this is when he was a candidate. So now that we, Scott Adams, right, hypnotist filter, Biden is confessing our election system is rigged. When he says it matters who counts the votes, it doesn't sound like he's speculating. So this is him saying, I don't need you to get me elected and all that. So Trump released all this stuff yesterday, and I'll continue to read. It has often been repeated, there is no evidence of fraud in the 2020 election. In actuality, there is no evidence Joe Biden won. Ongoing investigations in the swing states reveal hundreds of thousands of votes were altered and or not lawfully cast on the presidential election. Joe Biden needed them. On election night, November 3rd, Donald Trump was sailing to re-election with landslide leads in numerous battlegrounds. Georgia. So they released it on every state. You get Georgia. You've got, now you can read them all. There's all kinds of details, numbers, Again, we, as Bitcoiners, don't get into the details about election problems, right? The details, 99.9 are fake. All you need to know is why you're a Bitcoiner and not a shitcoiner, right? The blockchain trade-offs, right, that every Bitcoiner understands innately, not every crypto person, but every Bitcoiner understands innately, is that the other chains belong to some form of consumer product, consumer technology, and indeed are designed to be faster, better, quicker, faster settlement, right? iPhone 12, iPhone 13, iPhone 14, Ethereum 2.0, Ethereum Max, all of this kind of stuff, right? Now, the reason why Bitcoin being the first is still the most valuable and still not even the best by far, is because the trade-offs that we're dealing with are not from consumer technology. They're actually from cryptography. And cryptography requires you to survive attacks to be credible. So in the end, the engineering trade-offs that every Bitcoiner understands are between convenience and credibility. It's very simple. You can have one, but not the other. So all of the shit coins always choose convenience, which is fine, right? For slinging whatever bullshit it is they're into, blah, 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 let them have it, right? That's not what I'm here to argue about. I'm here to argue and underline why you love Bitcoin. You love Bitcoin because it didn't opt for convenience. It opted for credibility. Yeah, it's slow. Of course it's slow. Don't if someone tells you Bitcoin's slow, say, you're damn right it's slow, right? But that's why it's safe. That's why it's credible. And so the voting systems live in the same engineering trade-offs as Bitcoin. So as Bitcoiners, we're always on the right footing when we talk about election systems in terms of credibility. And you can make them more convenient, but at what cost of credibility? So that's what's been going on, right? Now, I think I booked Sticks, Hex, and Hammer for Bitcoin Nashville yesterday. Him and I were chatting. And that was one of the things I said, what do you want me to talk about? I'm not a Bitcoin expert. And I said, well, you've been following elections pretty closely. We're going to be covering elections pretty closely. Not like, did you see what they did in Georgia, Ruby Freeman, right? Don't go down, as much as I love Mayor Giuliani, do not go down that road. He was wrong. There is no criminal anything against Ruby Freeman. And I'm sure there would be if there was something, right? I'm sure about it. I'm absolutely sure. So Ruby Freeman, the one he was saying, any one of these people, they could be 100% Democrat, broken brain, all the rest of it, right? But they're still American citizens and they are innocent until proven guilty. The system, on the other hand, is guilty and not credible. Now, that's a different story, right? The system is what we're talking about. I don't care about boxes and 2,000 mules. I don't care. Like, it doesn't persuade people. It doesn't change anyone's mind, and it's probably fake, right? Probably fake. So you got to be careful of those actual stories of corruption. And all of this, everything that Kanakoa writes here could be true. Trump's report on this vote and eligible voters and the thing changed and the whatever. I'm not even saying it's true or not true. I don't know. Might all be true. It might be. But what's important is that Bitcoiners continue to talk about this stuff in terms of design choices, which is why when they say we're not sure Biden won, well, I go back to we didn't have elections. We don't have elections. We have something that people call elections. It's not an election. It's a scam, right? It would be like, does the shittiest blockchain have transactions? Maybe, but what kind of confirmation are you dealing with? How easy would it to be 51% attacked? as a Bitcoiner, you would say, well, one of the first things I ever heard from Andrew Polstra, a mathematician involved in Bitcoin design, a Bitcoin core dev, and this is in the early days of Ethereum, saying, well, Ethereum never has any consensus, like the mathematical nature of how the longest chain is identified is not credible. So there is no one Ethereum chain out there. Like, I don't really understand all of his arguments, but what he said was that there isn't the type of finality that you would want if you were coming from Wall Street and you were dealing with, a huge amount of value and numbers. So, this idea of optimizing for performance, for video games, it's fine. For your cell phone, it's fine. Not for your money. It's a different story. And not for your election systems either, I would argue. So we continue to be on the correct footing when it comes to this stuff. And we continue to talk about it in a way that I think is the most beneficial and will allow us to understand how to compartmentalize corruption. Because the only reason why anyone thinks Biden won is because the fiat nodes propagated the message. That's it. And remember who helped them propagate that message? It was FTX. It was. FTX, if you guys didn't remember, ran the election prediction markets that were the most widely cited in the days after the election as proof that the non-sentimental Wall Street people just calling it even were believing Biden won, which was always fake. It was always fake. And it was used for cognitive closure at the time. Look, Wall Street thinks Biden won, right? Fake. So you have to be able to see those tensions. Now that we understand how the corruption works and we see the inability of the fiat nodes to propagate, it's much more obvious what's going on. And looks like we're going to win. It looks like 2024 is off to exactly the start that we predicted it was going to get off to. The most interesting year of just mind-blowing truth coming out all over the place. It will not be possible to contain it. The difficulty adjustment for the node propagation of fiat is just too weak, and it can't do it, right? So we're winning, guys. All right. Screw the ETF, just give me my halving and FOMO years of Brandon. Yeah. Don't forget, Bitcoiners, it was always a good thing that Biden won in 2020. I embraced Biden and the chaos of all of this, not because I thought Biden was going to be a good president. I thought he would be by far the worst we ever had. But you got to go through these things, right? Going back to the engineering, what does an engineer do? Right? What does an engineer do when they're stumped and they can't fix a thing? So if you're thinking about how to get Bitcoin and America on the Bitcoin standard, what was the shortest road there in 2020? The shortest road was Joe Biden. It really was. And I embraced it then. I said, okay, I want a stolen election. I want all of these things, and then I'm okay with Biden. And we got everything I asked for. Everything I asked for was obvious corruption, obvious lack of credibility. And now you get Bukele saying, imagine we didn't have that in 2020. In 2020, there was not a country on the Bitcoin standard saying America can no longer lecture us about democracy. That's where we're at today. Much better place to be in. Much better place to be in. Trump was too good. Too good. He was an obstacle for Bitcoin. So look, Bitcoin would have been delayed had it not been for this. So here we are, and we got what we asked for. And indeed, look, Muslim Bitcoiner, we can laugh and say 4 more years of Bitcoin. It will bring in a Bitcoin standard, but I don't know if we can handle the misery. It's pretty bad out there, right? I hear all of these Bitcoiners say, oh, I want to go off and live alone. There is no hiding from the collective unconscious anyway. You can't get away from this. There's no hiding. There just isn't. It's there. It's everywhere you go, right? You can lessen the symptoms. I'm here in Barbados. We don't consume as much American propaganda. I don't consume as much American propaganda in Quebec when I live there. Vermont, you can kind of ignore everything because nobody's home. But the idea that the idea that you can just get away from this is not possible, right? It's around us, and we got to solve it, and we're going to. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there. Brandon, how does it going, man? Hope you are well, Nolan. Best show in Bitcoin. I am indeed well. Well. Good morning, Bitcoin freedom lovers. Indeed, Bitcoin Deb. I love the video where he admits something to the effect that this is the largest fraudulent election. I've seen that. That's so good. So good. We nominated you to be interviewed by Natalie Brunel on Coin Stories, Building a Bitcoin Breakup Exposure. Thank you. We love Natalie Brunel. Yeah, we love Natalie Brunel. Muslim Bitcoiners, screw the give me 4 more years of it. So while we could enjoy 4 more years of Brandon, we are hoping for a respite. Credibility is time well spent, indeed. Blessing in disguise. Best show ever. We love it. John, Happy New Year, everybody. Indeed, Happy New Year. All right, that's all I got for today. Let me just look at the quickly at the Rumble comments, see what I got on Rumble happening. I got, well, it says very few people are watching. That surprises me. Let me try this again. Let me try again. Bitcoin Magazine. Give me the thing. Ah, there we go. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. Okay. That's more like it. 175 people watching on that one. Excellent stuff, guys. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. What do we got? Hello, everybody. Hello, Sluggo123. I hope you had a good New Year. Lance, Happy New Year, peeps. Indeed, Lance. Happy New Year, Sluggo. Indeed. How Barbados looking? It's beautiful here, veterans. We love it. The kids are having a great time. The French created scalping, apparently. I doubt it. Matt. Late but happy to be here. Welcome, Zim. Jimmy Kimmel shows the dark side. Pride cometh before the fall. Indeed, yeah. Again, we do, guys, be careful. Schadenfreude is the path to many dark things, and we don't want to do it. We got to help even the people that mocked us in other times, right? We can't enjoy their misery, but choose one person out there and limit it to them. Jimmy Kimmel might not be mine. I might choose someone else, but he's still on my list of people who I will say, sucks, bro. Sucks. Can't say I'm not enjoying it. All right, team. That's all I got. Thank you for providing the show. It's great. Thanks, Wisteria. Thank you. We love it. All right, everyone. Tell me how the new system went. New everything. So tell me how it went.